Hello, my dear listeners. Please write in the comments which city or country you are listening to us from. And don't forget to subscribe and like. Enjoy listening. Aurora Hayes held her head high, clenching her teeth tightly, but inside she still felt the phantom chill of that hospital floor. 6 years had passed, but the smell of antiseptic still stung her nostrils whenever she closed her eyes. That day, when she was only 10 years old, her little world collapsed under the screams and pain coming from the next room. Not her screams, not her pain. It was the pain of her best friend, Lily, whose piercing, desperate cries still echoed in her memory. Lily, with her freckles and infectious laughter, with whom she shared all secrets and dreams, came home beaten, with bruises and scrapes after encountering high school kids who just decided to have some fun. Aurora, small and helpless, stood on Lily's porch when the ambulance arrived. The sirens wailed piercingly in the evening air, painting everything around in red and blue. She saw the paramedics carefully loading Lily onto a stretcher, how her parents, pale and bewildered, ran alongside, their faces twisted in horror. She heard snippets of phrases: broken arm, concussion, severe shock. In that moment, Aurora, engulfed by terror and despair, rushed at those teenagers who were still standing nearby, smirking and tossing jokes around. "How could you?" she shouted, her little fist swinging at the tallest of them, a guy with a mocking look. He just smirked and easily pushed her aside. Aurora fell onto the asphalt, scraping her elbow and knee. The pain was sharp but insignificant compared to the pain she saw in Lily's eyes when she looked at her from the ambulance. Aurora sat in the hospital corridor on the cold, tiled floor, pressing her back against the wall. She heard the muffled sobs of Lily's parents, their whispers about how this shouldn't have happened. It's our fault. The feeling of helplessness choked her. She, who had always been so brave, so determined, could do nothing. In that moment, she made a vow to herself: never again. She would never be so helpless again. She would never allow anyone she loved to suffer because of someone else's cruelty. This vow became her compass, her curse, her purpose. It was engraved on her heart like the scars on her hands that remained from falling on the asphalt. After that day, Aurora's childhood changed. She became withdrawn, avoided large groups, constantly scanned her surroundings for potential threats. Her attempts to be invisible worked only partially. Bullying found her, as it did many others. In elementary school, she was teased for her strangeness, for always being alone. In middle school, she was shoved in the hallway, her books scattered, simply because she looked wrong. Each time, she felt the same helplessness she had felt at Lily's house. She tried to stand up for herself, but faced defeats. Her little fists were powerless against the older and stronger. That was when she began to seek strength. Every morning, long before dawn, when the town of Sterling Creek still slept under the cover of darkness, and the rare street lights cast long shadows on the empty streets, Aurora was at the Iron Will Dojo. It was an old building, steeped in sweat and discipline, located on the outskirts of town, beyond the railroad, in an industrial area. Inside, it smelled of old wood, leather, and a specific pungent mix of sweat and cleaning supplies. The air was heavy, charged with energy. Every strike, every breath, every creak of the mats on the floor spoke of endless hours of work, of thousands of repetitions. For Aurora, this place was more than just a gym. It was her refuge, her temple, where she could control at least something in her life. Here, there was no room for weakness, no room for fear. Here, there was only strength, discipline, and pain that cleansed. Coach Jackson, a former Marine with a stern yet fair gaze and a voice that could cut through steel, said she had talent. "Aurora, you were born for this," he said, watching her honed movements. "There's a fire in you." But Aurora knew it wasn't talent, it was obsession. An obsession with control, strength, the ability to protect herself, and perhaps others. She trained until exhaustion, until her muscles trembled, until the world around her narrowed down to a single movement, a single strike. Her body was a tool, her mind cold and calculating. Sometimes she forgot about food, about sleep, about anything other than the next training session. Her hands were calloused, her body ached, but that pain was desired. It was proof of her strength, her armor. She performed her rituals, first warming up, then practicing strikes on the bag, then shadow sparring, and only after her muscles burned did she move on to working on the most complex techniques. Jackson taught her not only physical techniques, but also philosophy. Fighting is not just about fists, Aurora, it's about the mind. It's will. It's knowing yourself and your opponent. He taught her patience, strategy, control over emotions. This was her way to cleanse herself, to forget about the outside world that seemed so chaotic and unfair. North Central High School in Sterling Creek was a typical American institution. A brick building, wide hallways filled with teenage drama, unspoken rules, and hierarchies. Aurora tried to be inconspicuous, to blend into the background. She walked along the walls, always choosing the farthest desks in class, eating in a corner of the cafeteria. Her backpack was always tightly pressed against her body, like a shield. She wore loose clothing, long sleeves to hide the thin, almost invisible scars on her arms. A reminder of that day when she tried to stop those teenagers and they tossed her aside like a rag doll. She avoided unnecessary attention, but her aura of calm strength, her confident stride, her gaze that seemed too mature for her age always set her apart, even if she didn't want it. Classmates used to her silence often simply overlooked her, or if they noticed, preferred not to engage, sensing some inexplicable aura. That Tuesday during lunch, everything changed. The cafeteria buzzed like a disturbed hive. Hundreds of voices merged into one continuous noise, mixed with the clinking of forks and spoons, the scraping of chairs, and the smell of fries mingled with the aroma of tomato soup. Leo Maxwell, a quiet, talented artist with a mop of unruly chestnut hair, sat at a table in the far corner of the cafeteria, absorbed in his sketchbook. He was one of those who always tried to be invisible, but his talent and gentle nature made him an easy target. Aurora had noticed him before, seen how he hid behind books, how his eyes sought refuge in drawings. She felt a kinship with him, understanding his desire to escape reality. Leo was often the subject of ridicule for his softness. His drawings were called girly, and he himself was labeled a nerdy artist. He was often shoved in the hallways, had his belongings hidden, and once even had his favorite t-shirt with a comic book hero torn. He simply endured, head down. Tiffany Miller, the queen of the school, with her flawless blonde locks, bright makeup, and a retinue of two friends, Brittany and Haley, approached Leo's table. Tiffany loved power, loved to see fear in others' eyes, and Leo was the perfect victim to demonstrate her superiority. She came from an influential family. Her father was a major developer in Sterling Creek, which gave her a sense of impunity. She was used to getting away with everything. "What do we have here?" Tiffany sang, her voice sweetly venomous as she abruptly snatched the sketchbook from Leo's hands. "Oh, Leo, are you drawing flowers? How cute. Maybe you should draw how you cry. That would be very realistic. Or draw how you run away from me, like usual." "Oh, wait, you're already doing it!" Brittany and Haley giggled, covering their mouths with their hands, their eyes sparkling with malice. Leo turned red, his hands trembling as he tried to retrieve his notebook. "Give it back, Tiffany. It's mine, please. Don't touch my drawings." "Yours? Do you think anyone cares?" Tiffany flipped through a few pages. On one of them was an amazing portrait of an old tree with twisted roots, done with incredible detail. On another was a delicate watercolor landscape. Tiffany smirked disdainfully, then, with a dramatic snap, tore the page with the tree in half and then again. "There, now it's art. Modern, abstract. Maybe you should exhibit in a trash gallery, or maybe I'll set up a show for you right here." She held up the torn pages, displaying them to everyone. Something inside Aurora snapped. She saw that look in Leo's eyes: fear, humiliation, helplessness. The same look she once had, the same look Lily had. Her fists involuntarily clenched. She felt adrenaline coursing through her veins, as if the steel inside her was beginning to melt from rage. She stood up, her chair scraping against the table, the sound seeming to echo throughout the cafeteria, drowning out the noise. The entire buzz of voices, the clatter of dishes, everything seemed to quiet down as Aurora took her first step. Dozens of eyes were fixed on her. Some students looked down, pretending not to see anything, while others pulled out their phones to record the scene. A few people who had once been victims of Tiffany themselves looked at Aurora with suppressed hope. "Give him his things back, Tiffany," Aurora said, her voice low and calm. But there was a steeliness in it that she had tempered in the dojo for years. Each word was sharpened like a strike. Tiffany turned to her, her blue eyes narrowing like a predator's, her lips curling into a contemptuous sneer. "Oh, look who we have here." Miss Invisible decided to step out of the shadows. "And who are you to tell me what to do? Maybe you should mind your own business before I take care of you. Or do you want everyone to know your little secrets? I heard you're not as quiet as you pretend to be." "I'm the one telling you to give him his sketchbook back," Aurora repeated, taking another step forward. Her gaze was locked on Tiffany, unyielding like a hunter tracking its prey. Tiffany smirked, trying to hide the slight confusion that flickered in her eyes. "And what will you do if I don't give it back? Cry? Call mommy? Or maybe show us your fighting moves?" "Oh, how scary. You don't think you can intimidate me, do you?" She dramatically crumpled the torn page she was holding and threw it on the floor right in front of Leo. "Here, take your trash. It suits you, just like your drawings." Aurora didn't move. Her eyes remained fixed on Tiffany. "I won't cry, and I won't call mommy. But you will regret not listening. You will regret it very much, because you don't know who you're messing with. And this isn't a threat, it's only promise." Something in her calmness, in her unflinching gaze, made Tiffany hesitate. She dropped the sketchbook on the table and it slipped to the floor. "You asked for it, Aurora Hayes. You'll regret this, I promise. And it won't just be a ruined notebook. It'll be something much worse." Tiffany turned and, gathering her friends who looked a bit frightened, walked away proudly, trying to save face. Leo picked up his sketchbook, his hands trembling. He looked at Aurora, his eyes filled with gratitude and amazement. "Thank you, Aurora," he whispered. You shouldn't have done that. Now you'll have problems, big problems." Aurora nodded. "It's okay. No one should have to endure that, and no one should be afraid to draw trees or anything else." From that day on, Aurora's life at school changed. Tiffany declared an unofficial war on her, and it was worse than an open confrontation. It was a slow, suffocating siege that seeped into every aspect of her school life. At first, it was the rumors, whispers behind her back in the hallways that reached Aurora like a venomous snake's hiss. "Aurora Hayes is a psychopath. She attacked Tiffany. She was kicked out of her last school for fighting. She's just seeking attention because no one loves her." Then came the vandalized belongings in her locker. Textbooks soaked in juice, sports uniforms stained with dirt, and one day she found her backpack filled with trash and dead insects. Her favorite pen, a gift from her father, was broken in half. There were attempts to frame her. Someone slipped cheat sheets into her hands during tests to accuse her of cheating. Someone accidentally spilled drinks on her in the cafeteria, leaving sticky stains on her clothes. And one day, her name was scrawled on the bathroom wall with an insulting message that everyone could see. She found notes with threats in her locker, and her social media page was filled with anonymous, scathing comments. Aurora tried to ignore it, but the tension grew. She felt like a cornered animal, constantly bracing for the next blow. She was scared that her efforts to be invisible had failed, that she had become a target once again. But at the same time, a fury was growing inside her. Fury at Tiffany, at the system, at her own helplessness in childhood. She wouldn't let them break her. At night, she couldn't sleep, replaying the day's events in her mind, trying to find a way to fight back. She kept a journal where she wrote down her thoughts and feelings. It was her only way to vent without resorting to violence. The pages were filled with her anger, her despair, her determination. Sometimes she would just sit in her room, hugging her knees to her chest and cry quietly, feeling utterly alone. But then she would remember Lily, and her pain would turn into steely resolve. Other students reacted differently. Some, especially those who had suffered bullying themselves, began to look at Aurora with timid hope as a savior. They saw in her the strength that they wished they had. They approached her when Tiffany wasn't around and whispered words of support. Others, fearing Tiffany, turned away, pretending not to notice, their eyes full of cowardice and shame. Some even recorded what was happening on their phones, turning someone else's pain into entertainment, into yet another viral video that they would later discuss in chats. One day after classes, as Aurora was heading to her locker to grab her books, Tiffany and her crew blocked her path. The hallway was almost empty, making the situation even more sinister. The sun was already setting and long shadows lay on the floor, creating a sense of impending threat. The air was heavy, foreboding conflict. "Well, what's up, Miss Defender?" Tiffany sneered, her eyes gleaming with malice. "You think you're so cool? Let's see how you look when your locker is filled with trash. Or when everyone finds out what you're really like. Maybe you can tell us why you get so twitchy when someone raises their voice. You must have some issues, huh?" Aurora looked at her, her face impenetrable, like a mask. "I don't want any trouble, Tiffany. Get out of my way. I have no secrets that concern you." "But I want trouble." Tiffany shoved her sharply in the shoulder, causing Aurora to nearly crash into the locker. "You think you can just humiliate me like that? I'll show you who's in charge here. You'll regret you were ever born. You'll regret you ever dared to defy me." Aurora, using instincts honed over the years, easily sidestepped, allowing Tiffany's momentum to carry her past. Tiffany lost her balance and nearly fell, her heels sliding on the linoleum, making an unpleasant screech. Her friends gasped, their eyes widening in surprise. "What the hell?" Tiffany growled, trying to regain her balance, her face contorted with rage. "Are you kidding me? Do you think this is funny?" "I told you I don't want any trouble," Aurora repeated, her voice as calm as the whisper of the wind, but there was a hidden threat in it, a steely resolve. Tiffany, furious, lunged at her again, swinging her arm. Aurora, without using force, merely dodged, employing movements that resembled a dance, smooth and elusive. She intercepted Tiffany's arm as she swung and gently yet firmly redirected her momentum, causing Tiffany to stumble and fall to her knees, hitting the floor. Her shiny hair splayed out and her face contorted in a grimace of pain and humiliation. Tiffany sat on the floor, her face crimson with rage and embarrassment. You can fight?" she rasped, her voice filled with shock and disbelief. You're some kind of freak. You're sick." "I know how to defend myself," Aurora replied, her gaze as solid as stone. "And I'm not a freak. I just don't let myself be humiliated by anyone." The entire corridor froze. Students who had appeared out of nowhere, drawn by the noise, stared at Aurora in astonishment. Some whispered, others recorded on their phones, but most just stood with their mouths agape, unable to believe their eyes. No one expected this from the quiet girl who always tried to stay in the shadows. At that moment, Miss Evelyn Reed, the homeroom teacher, a kind but slightly absent-minded woman who always tried to see the good in her students, appeared at the end of the corridor. She saw Tiffany on the floor and Aurora standing over her, surrounded by a crowd of students. Her face expressed complete confusion. "What is happening here?" Miss Reed asked, her voice filled with concern and bewilderment as she hurried toward them. "Tiffany, Aurora, what is this mess?" Stop it immediately. Tiffany immediately jumped up, her eyes filling with tears that seemed sincere, but Aurora knew it was just part of her act. She attacked me, Miss Reed. She pushed me. She hit me. I was just walking by and she jumped on me for no reason. She began to sob, dramatically covering her face with her hands. Aurora remained silent. She knew her words would change nothing. The system was against her. Tiffany's words always carried more weight. Aurora, is that true? Miss Reed asked, looking at her with confusion and disappointment. I thought you were above this. I didn't expect this from you. No, Miss Reed, Leo, who had run up to them, replied, his usually timid voice surprisingly firm and confident. Tiffany started it. She pushed Aurora, and Aurora was just defending herself. I saw everything, and others did too. He pointed to the crowd of students, many of whom nodded in agreement, some even showing their phones with video recordings. Miss Reed sighed. She was aware of the issues with Tiffany, but this situation was new. She took both girls to the principal's office. Mr. Harrison, a tall, balding man with a stern, impenetrable face. He cared more about the school's reputation and its influential sponsors, like Tiffany's father, than about the well-being of the students. He was a man who preferred not to see problems unless they threatened his position. After long explanations that resembled an interrogation and threats of disciplinary action, Tiffany received a stern warning while Aurora got a reprimand for participating in a conflict. Principal Harrison seemed clearly puzzled but unwilling to delve into the essence of the matter. We do not tolerate violence in this school, Miss Hayes, he said, looking at her over his glasses, his voice cold and detached. Regardless of who started it, you should have just walked away. You should have reported it to a teacher. You should not have taken matters into your own hands. His words felt like a slap, highlighting the injustice of the system. The next day, Leo approached Aurora during lunch. He looked more confident than usual, his shoulders squared, and his eyes burning with determination. Aurora, you were incredible yesterday. You could teach me. Well, you know how to defend myself. I'm tired of being a target. I am tired of being constantly humiliated for loving to draw. I want it to stop. I want to stand up for myself. Aurora looked at him. There was no fear in his eyes, only hope and determination. It was the same look she had when she decided to change her life. It's not that simple, Leo. It takes years of training, discipline, sweat, and pain. It's not just fighting. It's a way of life. It's a change of mindset. I am ready to learn, Leo said resolutely, his voice steady. I am tired of being a target. I am tired of being afraid. I am ready for anything. I want to be strong, like you. Aurora hesitated. She had always kept her skills to herself, like a secret weapon. But Leo's gaze was so similar to her own when she was young. All right, she finally said, but it will be hard, very hard. No leniency and no excuses. Are you ready for that? Ready, Leo replied, nodding. Thus began their training. After school, when the sun started to set, painting the sky in orange and purple hues, they made their way to an old abandoned gym outside of town. It was a dusty, forgotten place where basketball might have once been played. Broken windows, peeling paint on the walls, the smell of dampness and old wood. But for them, it was the perfect place. There were no curious eyes, no judgmental stares. Here, they were free. Aurora showed Leo the basic movements, how to stand, how to breathe, how to use his body weight to evade a strike, how to block. Leo was awkward, his movements stiff, but he was persistent. He fell, got back up, fell again, but never gave up. One more time, Leo, higher block, faster! Aurora commanded, her voice strict but supportive. Leo was sweating, his muscles burning, but he kept going. One time when he fell again, Aurora reached out her hand. You don't have to be perfect, Leo. You have to be persistent. That's the whole difference. Soon, Chloe Peterson, Aurora's classmate who had always been kind to her and possessed a sharp mind, joined them. Chloe was smart and observant, and she saw that Aurora was not just a fighter. She saw strength and justice in her. "I want to learn too," Chloe said. "Not to fight, but to feel more confident. To know that I can stand up for myself if I have to. I am tired of being seen as just a nerd that people can laugh at." Despite her sharp intellect, Chloe often became a target for mockery due to her love of science and her reluctance to engage in teenage nonsense. She was often shoved in the hallways, her textbooks hidden, and once even locked in a classroom. Her motivation was deeper than just physical protection. She wanted to gain inner strength so that her intelligence would not be her weakness. Aurora taught Chloe quick reactions, how to use her agility and wit. Then came Noah Jenkins, a tall, somewhat clumsy guy who was also often teased for his size and love of comics. He heard about Aurora's secret training from Leo and came, full of hope. I just want to stop being a walking target," he mumbled, blushing, his huge hands nervously fiddling with the edges of his t-shirt. "I don't want to hit anyone, but I want to be left alone. I am tired of being used." Noah was strong but didn't know how to use his strength. He was always the big nice guy who was easily manipulated. He was often asked to help with heavy things and then ridiculed. Aurora saw potential in him. She taught him to use his mass for blocks and grabs, turning his clumsiness into an advantage. Their small group grew, becoming something more than just a training club. It was a family. They joked, supported each other, shared their fears and hopes. Leo learned to balance. His movements became smoother, and his drawings, which he began bringing to training, became more confident. Noah, with his mass, learned to use his weight for blocks and grabs, his movements becoming more precise. Chloe practiced quick reactions. Her mind helped her anticipate movements, and she began to feel more confident. They laughed when someone fell, but always extended a helping hand. They created their own codes of behavior based on respect and protection of the weak. Meanwhile, Ethan Vance, a charismatic but troubled guy with tattoos on his forearms, who often hung out with the local street gang led by Victor Viper Thorne, began to show interest in Aurora. Ethan was smart but had chosen the wrong path, succumbing to the temptation of easy money and power. He was an orphan, having lost his parents early, and the street became his family. Viper offered him protection and opportunities, and Ethan, desperate and lonely, agreed. He saw her strength, her coolness, and thought she could be useful to Viper, the man who instilled fear in half the city. Viper controlled small businesses, distributed drugs, and was involved in gambling. His name was whispered with caution. His presence caused panic. Ethan, though part of this world, felt it slowly but surely eating away at him from the inside. He saw how Viper broke lives, how he used fear and violence to control. He felt disgust for himself but didn't know how to escape. One day, Ethan approached Aurora after training as she was leaving the dojo, her face focused. "Hey Aurora, I heard you can stand up for yourself. And not just for yourself. My boss, Viper, is looking for people like you. Strong, fearless. You could earn well, very well. He can give you everything you want. Money, protection, respect." Aurora looked at him coldly, her eyes like ice. "I don't work for gangsters, Ethan, and I never will. My strength is not for oppressing others, it's for protection." Ethan smirked, trying to appear confident, but something like weariness and despair flickered in his eyes. "You don't understand, Aurora. Viper is power. With him, you'll be safe. No one will dare to touch you. He can give you everything you want. And without him, you're just one of many who will obey. You'll be a victim." "I'll take care of myself," Aurora replied, turning to leave. "And I don't need respect bought with fear. I choose my path. The path of freedom." "Think about it," Ethan shouted after her, his voice full of bitterness. "In this city, there are only two types of people, those who obey and those who rule. Do you want to be a subordinate your whole life, Or do you want to be on top? The choice is yours, but remember, Viper doesn't like being refused. Ethan's words made Aurora think. She knew the world wasn't black and white, and that the temptation of power was great. But her path was different. Her strength lay not in subjugating others, but in liberation. She didn't want to be Viper. She wanted to be stronger than Viper, but in her own way. At home, Aurora's relationship with her father, David Hayes, was strained like a taut string. David, a tall, strong man with tired eyes, worked as a builder. His hands were calloused, and his back ached from hard labor. He was a loving but deeply traumatized father who saw in her only his little girl, hurt in the past. He didn't understand her obsession with training, her constant pursuit of strength. He blamed himself for not being able to protect her back then, and this guilt suffocated him, turning him into a hyper-protective, anxious man. He constantly tried to shield her from a world he believed was full of dangers. "Aurora, why are you so late?" he asked one evening when she returned from the dojo, her shirt soaked with sweat and her hair stuck to her forehead. "Were you at your training again? Maybe you should do something more normal? Join a school club? Go on dates like other girls your age? I worry about you. I just want you to be safe." His voice was full of concern and hidden despair. "Dad, you don't understand," Aurora replied, her voice tense, feeling the wall between them growing higher. "This isn't just training. It's what helps me feel safe. It's what helps me breathe. It's my protection. It's what keeps me from breaking." "But you are safe." "I'm here to protect you," David said, his voice filled with desperation, his eyes pleading for her to understand. He couldn't forget the day she came home beaten, with bruises and scrapes, after trying to stand up for Lily. He felt like the most useless father in the world. He remembered how she, small and fragile, lay on the floor crying from pain and helplessness. That image haunted him in nightmares. He tried to make her quit training, offering her music or dance lessons instead. But Aurora just shook her head. "You can't always be there, Dad," Aurora whispered, and pain flickered in her eyes. That pain was too deep to share. She couldn't tell him what had happened, how she felt helpless, how she had been betrayed by those who were supposed to protect her. She couldn't say that his overprotectiveness, his constant worry, only intensified her feelings of guilt and loneliness. She felt trapped between his love and her desire for freedom, for self-defense. Meanwhile, Ethan was sinking deeper into the world of Viper. He saw how Viper manipulated people, how he used fear to control them. Ethan witnessed brutal reprisals, threats, and blackmail. He saw how Viper's people shattered lives, how they destroyed families, and it slowly but surely ate away at him from the inside. He began to realize that he had become part of what he despised. He had to get out before it was too late. He started drinking to numb his conscience, but it didn't help. The breaking point came when Ethan saw Viper threaten his younger sister, Sarah, a fragile, blonde 12-year-old girl who owed a small amount of money to one of his men due to a silly mistake. Sarah, crying, begged for mercy. Viper laughed, looking at Sarah's frightened face, his eyes cold and merciless. "Time's running out, girl. Tomorrow I'll come for what's mine, and if the money isn't there, I'll take something else, something very dear to you, like your smile." Ethan realized that this man would stop at nothing. He couldn't allow his sister to become the next victim. This was the last straw. His own past, when he had been just as helpless as Sarah, resurfaced in his memory. He remembered Aurora, her calm strength, her refusal to submit. He knew she was the only one who could help him because she was the only one not afraid of Viper. Ethan found Aurora after school as she was leaving the dojo, her face focused. He looked pale and scared, his hands trembling, and his eyes filled with despair. "Aurora, I need your help, please. I don't know who else to turn to. I'm desperate." Aurora looked at him with disbelief, but in his eyes, she saw true fear and desperation. "What happened, Ethan? You look like you've seen a ghost." What did Viper do? Viper. He's gone too far. He's threatening my sister Sarah. Ethan gasped, each word coming out with difficulty. He said that if she doesn't return the money by tomorrow, he'll do to her what he did to others. I can't let that happen. I can't let him break her like he broke so many others. I can't be part of this anymore. He took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. And also, I know that Tiffany is planning something. She wants to publicly humiliate you. At the school dance this Saturday, she's going to slip something into your drink and film it. And Viper, he promised her help if she takes care of you. He wants you to work for him. He thinks you're going to become his new asset, his new toy. He wants to break you. Aurora felt her heart clench with rage. This was not just bullying. This was an attempt to break her, to subjugate her, to turn her into a tool. What exactly is she planning to slip in? Some kind of sleeping pill, Ethan replied, to make you look crazy, so everyone laughs at you, so you lose everything, so you look pathetic and helpless. She wants you to feel the same way Leo does. Thank you, Ethan, Aurora said, her voice as firm as steel. You did the right thing by coming to me. You saved your sister, and maybe yourself. You took the first step toward freedom. I know, Ethan whispered, his eyes filled with relief. I just want Sarah to be safe, and I want to get out of this forever. I can't be a part of this anymore. I want to be better. Aurora told everything to her friends, Leo, Chloe, and Noah. They were shocked, their faces pale. Leo clenched his fists, Chloe covered her mouth with her hand, Noah frowned, his usually cheerful face turned serious. We have to do something, Leo said, his normally shy voice full of determination. We can't let them do this. It's too dangerous. It's unfair. But how? Chloe asked, her brows furrowed. It's Tiffany, and Viper is involved. It's dangerous. We can't just go against them. They have too much power. We won't fight, Aurora said, her gaze steady. We'll be smarter. We'll expose them. We'll show everyone who they really are. We'll use their own weapon against them. We'll bring them to light. They gathered in the old gym, their faces illuminated by the dim light of lanterns filtering through broken windows. It was a real brainstorming session. Everyone contributed. Leo, with his filming skills, suggested recording everything on his phone to have undeniable evidence. He even brought his old camcorder to ensure better quality. Chloe, with her sharp mind, devised a plan to switch the cups using a distraction and her knowledge of psychology. Noah, with his height and knowledge of school equipment, figured out how to project the video onto a big screen during the dance using the gym's projector. Ethan, trembling with nerves but resolute, agreed to be their eyes and ears in the enemy camp, relaying information about Tiffany's movements and plans. They worked late into the night, refining every detail of their plan, discussing the minutiae. They even found a way to obtain a safe but effective sleeping pill that could be bought over the counter to use against Tiffany. It was risky, but they were ready to take that chance to achieve justice. On Saturday evening, the gym of North Middle School was filled with a festive atmosphere. Music blared, colorful lights flashed, creating a kaleidoscope of shadows and light on the dance floor. The air was filled with the smell of popcorn, sweat, and cheap perfume. Hundreds of students danced, laughed, and flirted, unaware of the drama about to unfold. Tiffany, dressed in a shiny, form-fitting fuchsia dress, twirled in the center of the hall, feeling like the queen of the ball. Her laughter was loud and haughty, and she constantly looked around searching for Aurora. Today she will get what she deserves, she whispered to Brittany, her eyes gleaming with malice. Everyone will laugh at her. She will become a laughingstock. Her life will be ruined. Aurora, dressed in a simple yet elegant black dress, stood by the wall with her friends. Her heart raced a little faster than usual, but she maintained an outward calm, her face impassive. Inside her, a hurricane of adrenaline, fear, and determination raged. She felt every gaze, every whisper. Ethan, nervous but determined, stood a little way off, his eyes constantly searching for Tiffany, signaling to Aurora. Leo held his phone ready to start recording. Chloe discreetly checked her pockets, making sure the cup with the sleeping pill was in place. Noah sat behind the DJ booth, his fingers nervously tapping on the buttons. When Tiffany, with her flawless smile, approached Aurora with 2 glasses of bright red punch, her eyes sparkled with anticipation. She was confident in her victory, in her genius. "Aurora, you look lonely. Didn't anyone invite you to dance? Want some punch? I poured it myself just for you. It's special." Her voice was full of feigned concern, but there was a hint of mockery in it. "Thank you, Tiffany." Aurora took the glass, her fingers barely brushing the cold glass. She felt a slight tremor in her hand, but quickly suppressed it, remembering Lily. "This one's for you." Tiffany pointed to one of them, her gaze full of malice. "I poured it myself. It's special. I hope you like it. It'll help you relax." Aurora smiled, her smile barely noticeable, but it held a hint of steel. "How sweet, but I think you're mistaken." She, quickly unnoticed by Tiffany, using the agility honed over years, switched the glasses. It was a movement that could only be seen in slow motion, so fast and precise it was. "This one seems to be yours, and this one is mine. You wouldn't want me to drink your punch, would you? It looks so delicious." Tiffany, completely confident in her cunning, unaware of the trick, took the glass she thought was for Aurora. "Oh, right. I'm so scatterbrained." She took a big sip, then another, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. She didn't even notice the slight bitter aftertaste that quickly dissolved into the sweetness of the punch. In a few minutes, Tiffany began to feel strange. Her movements became awkward, her speech slurred. She started laughing for no reason, her laughter too loud, too sharp, almost hysterical. Then her laughter turned into a hysterical cackle that drew the attention of those around her. Brittany and Haley, who had initially laughed at her, began to worry. "Tiffany, are you okay?" Brittany asked, her voice filled with concern. Tiffany didn't respond. She started dancing, her movements wild, uncontrolled, like a marionette that had lost its strings. She stumbled and fell, sprawling on the floor, drawing the attention of the entire hall. The music seemed to fade as dozens of eyes stared at her. A whisper ran through the crowd, then it turned into an indignant murmur. Some students pulled out their phones to film the scene. Leo, who was recording everything on his phone, it captured several clear shots, his hands shaking with excitement, but he kept filming, his eyes filled with determination. Noah, using his height and his knowledge of the school's equipment maze, stealthily made his way to the DJ booth. His heart raced, but he knew he had to do it. He pressed a button. "Attention, please!" Noah's voice boomed from the speakers, cutting through the music, surprisingly loud and confident. "We have a little show here, just for you. A performance you won't forget. Get ready." On the large screen usually used for projecting music videos, a video appeared. It was footage shot by Ethan, where Tiffany, sitting in a cafe, boasted about her plan to slip something into Aurora's drink, her voice full of malice, her eyes burning with fire. "She'll regret messing with me. Everyone will laugh at her. She'll become a laughingstock. Her life will be ruined. The Viper will be pleased." Then the footage shifted to the current situation. Tiffany, convulsing on the floor, her face distorted, her eyes wandering, drool spilling from her mouth. It was a horrific sight. The entire hall gasped. Silence hung in the air, thick enough to hear one's own heartbeat. A whisper ran through the crowd, then it turned into an indignant murmur. Some students looked at Tiffany with disgust, others at Aurora with admiration. At that moment, several burly men burst into the hall, their faces stern, their gazes cold. They were the Viper's men. Sam Gaduka, tall, with a shaved head and a snake tattoo on his neck, was at the front. His appearance triggered a wave of fear that swept through the hall. The music faded and a grave silence fell over the room. He spotted Tiffany, then the screen, then Aurora standing calmly and confidently. His face darkened with rage. He realized that his plan had failed. "What is happening here?" Gadyuka growled, his voice low and threatening, like the growl of a predator. "Who dared to do this? Who dared to go against me?" "Your protege, Mr. Thorne," Aurora said calmly, her voice steady, without a hint of fear. She decided to put on a show, and it seems she accidentally drank her own drink. Lesson learned. A lesson for everyone. Now get out. Gadyuka looked at Ethan, who stood next to Aurora, his face pale but holding firm. You betrayed me, Ethan? You will regret this. You know what happens to traitors. I will find you." "I can't be part of this, Gadyuka," Ethan replied, his voice trembling. But he stood his ground, his eyes filled with determination. "My sister, she doesn't deserve this. No one does. I will no longer be your puppet. I choose a different path." Gadyuka stepped toward Ethan, his hand reaching for his pocket, but Aurora stepped between them, her gaze unwavering. "Step back, Thorne. This is a school dance. And you are an unwelcome guest here. Leave, immediately." "You will regret this, girl," Gadyuka hissed, his eyes burning with malice. "You don't know who you are dealing with. I will find you, and then you will regret every word. I will break you." "I have already regretted," Aurora replied, her gaze as firm as steel. "But I won't anymore. I control my life now, and you can't change that. You will no longer control anyone here." At that moment, Principal Harrison and Miss Reed entered the hall, summoned by the noise and the appearance of unfamiliar men. They saw Gadyuka and his men, as well as Tiffany, who was already being revived by Brittany and Haley. Principal Harrison, upon seeing Gadyuka, paled but composed himself, recalling the school's reputation. "Mr. Thorne, what are you doing here?" Principal Harrison asked sternly, his voice filled with indignation, but there was a hint of fear in it. "This is a private event. I ask you to leave immediately. Otherwise, I will call the police. This is a threat to public order." Gadyuka, realizing that his plan had failed and he was in an awkward position, retreated. "This is a misunderstanding, Principal. We just came to pick someone up." He pointed at Ethan. "Ethan Vance stays here," Miss Reed said, her voice surprisingly firm, feeling a surge of courage as she saw the students looking at her with hope. "You have no right to take him. Now please leave, all of you, immediately." Gadyuka shot Aurora one last threatening glance, full of hatred and humiliation, and turned to leave with his men. His defeat was evident, and he felt humiliated in front of everyone. He muttered something unintelligible, but his words were full of promises of revenge that dissolved into the night air. Tiffany was suspended indefinitely, and then, under pressure from parents and the public, transferred to another school in another city. Her parents tried to justify her, claiming that she had become a victim of intrigue and that it was all set up. But the video footage was undeniable evidence. Her friends, Brittany and Haley, lost their queen and became much quieter. Their influence in the school diminished. They no longer laughed so loudly, no longer looked down on others, their faces filled with fear. Aurora's story, her courage, and her victory over bullying quickly spread throughout the school and then the entire city. She was no longer the invisible girl. Now she was a heroine, a symbol of hope. Other students began to approach her, sharing their stories, asking for advice, seeking support. Some of them were victims of bullying, while others simply wanted to know how she had gained such strength. The dynamics in the school had changed. Bullies became more cautious, while victims grew bolder. Aurora, Leo, Chloe, and Noah, inspired by their success, decided to create a school program to combat bullying. They named it Unbreakable. Their goal was not only to teach self-defense, but also to give students a voice, to teach them to support each other, recognize, and confront bullying. They conducted workshops in schools throughout the district, organized support groups, and created a safe space for those suffering from bullying. At one of these workshops, in a small auditorium filled with dozens of students, Leo, trembling with excitement but with a firm voice, shared his story. He showed his drawings, which had once been the subject of mockery, but had now become symbols of his resilience. He recounted how he was teased for his girly drawings, how he hid them, how he wanted to give up drawing. But Aurora showed me that my strength lies in my uniqueness, in my art, he said, his eyes shining. Chloe, with her analytical mind, explained the psychology of bullying, helping students understand why it happens and how to combat it. She shared how her nerdiness made her a target, how she was called a bookworm and a killjoy. I thought my mind was my weakness, what you said, but now I know it's my greatest strength, and I use it to help you. Noah, big and kind, demonstrated basic self-defense techniques, showing that strength is not just about fists, but also confidence. He talked about how he was used because of his physical strength, how he couldn't say no, how he felt foolish. I was big but helpless, he admitted. But Aurora taught me how to use my strength for protection, not to be someone's toy. Ethan, freed from the influence of Viper, became an active participant in the program. He shared his experiences, telling how easy it is to fall under someone else's influence and how important it is to find the strength within oneself to resist it. He helped other kids who had gotten involved with gangs or had legal troubles find a way out. His story was a powerful testimony that touched many hearts. He spoke of his fear, his self-loathing, and how he found a path to redemption. He became a mentor for many who felt lost. Aurora's relationship with her father began to change. One evening as they sat in the kitchen, Aurora finally told him about what happened to her in childhood. She spoke about Lily, her screams, her helplessness, how she was cast aside, the scars on her arms. She shared how she felt betrayed by those who were supposed to protect her, and why training became her salvation, her way of regaining control over her life. David listened, his eyes filled with tears, his face contorted with pain and shame. He felt like the most useless father in the world, recalling the day he saw his little battered daughter. "I'm sorry, Aurora," he whispered, his voice trembling, his hands tightly gripping hers. "I'm sorry I didn't understand. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you then. I blamed myself so much for that day. I just wanted to shield you from all evil. I thought that if I kept you safe, you would never suffer again. But I was wrong. I only made things worse for you." He hugged her tightly, tighter than ever before, and Aurora felt the wall between them crumble, like ice melting under the sun. "You protected me, Dad," Aurora replied, her voice full of tenderness, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You were always there, and now I can protect myself, and maybe help others. That is my strength, and your love gave me that strength. You have always been my anchor." The Unbreakable program became incredibly successful. They conducted workshops in schools throughout the district, organized support groups, and created a safe space for those suffering from bullying. They even began collaborating with the local police to hold lectures on cyberbullying and its consequences. Aurora, Leo, Chloe, Noah, and Ethan became symbols of change. They proved that one person possessing courage can change the world around them, inspiring others to fight for justice. They were not just students, they were warriors, fighting not with fists, but with the strength of spirit, compassion, and an unwavering belief that everyone deserves to be safe and heard. Their story became a legend in Sterling Creek, and this was only the beginning. They continued their work, knowing that the fight for justice never ends, but they were ready for it. And although the Viper no longer appeared at school, his shadow still lingered over the town, reminding everyone that evil will always find a way to manifest itself. But now the unyielding were prepared.